On Tragedy, we cover cases that involve real people and real events. Episodes may include discussions of violence, criminal behavior, and loss. We share these stories to honor those impacted and to raise awareness, but they may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised. Before we continue the story of Michael John Olson, we have a few important updates. On October 6th, there will be a vigil held for both Jody Kilgore and Ian Rogers. We've been able to connect those families, and the vigil will be October 6th at 6:30 p.m. at the Old Wakulla County Courthouse, which is on the corner of the Crawfordville Highway and Martin Luther King. So please drop by, honk your horn if you just happen to be driving by, and share some love for the Kilgore and Rogers family. And second, we're excited to share that we now have a Podcast Plus subscriber option that gives you early access to new episodes. And you can find more details on that on our webpage, www.tragedy@truecrimepodcast.com. Now let's return to Michael's story. On December 1st, 1979, 20-year-old Michael John Olson vanished in West Palm Beach, Florida, where he had recently relocated from Edina, Minnesota, to begin a new job at the Presidential Country Club. That night, he went out with friends and was last seen when he dropped off a coworker at his vehicle, just down the road from the hotel where Michael himself was staying. Michael never made it back to his room. His maroon 1979 Pontiac Grand Prix disappeared with him, and for more than 4 decades, his family has been searching for answers. Today, we're joined by Michael's loved ones who have carried this fight forward, his brother, Jeff Olson, and sister-in-law, Cindy Olson, along with his nieces, Megan, Barnes, and Tabitha Kutke. Together, they'll help us remember Michael not just as a missing person in a cold case, but as a son, brother, and uncle whose absence has left a permanent mark on their lives. Welcome to Tragedy, a true crime podcast. I'm Elisa.
And I'm Michael.
And today we are continuing the story of Michael John Olson by speaking with several members of his family. We have Jeff, Mike's brother, his wife, Cindy, and 2 of Michael's nieces, Tabitha and Megan. And we are so grateful that you all joined us, and welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having us.
We would like you all to start with just telling us what you would like people to know about Michael.
Well, he wanted to have a job in the golfing industry, which is why he went down there.
He loved golf.
Yep.
He loved his family.
Yep. So I drove down there with him until he got an apartment set up, and then I flew back home.
And tell us about your recollections of the day he disappeared.
Well, I got a call from the golf pro at the Edina Country Club in Minnesota. We both worked there, me and Mike, and the golf pro had gotten a call from the golf pro down there that Mike didn't show up for work, and they were wondering if we had heard anything from him. And that didn't work out very well, so the next day, me and my dad flew down there to look around and find out what happened.
There was no cell phones, of course, back then, so it wasn't like you could, call Mike and see where he had gone. But I'm sure you guys called his hotel room, or how did you try to get a hold of Mike?
We didn't know he had a hotel room.
Oh, okay.
We thought he was in the apartment. We didn't know he had moved out of the apartment and back to the hotel.
Yeah, so let's remind our listeners that this was in 1979. And so we didn't have cell phones and we couldn't track where people were, and you couldn't just send a quick message. And so, you send someone down there who's quite young, right? Because he was 20. And you just kind of think that everything's going to be okay. And then there's quite a delay when you find out that something is going on, and then the need to travel down there. And he was actually staying at a hotel at the time, right? Because am I correct? He'd only been there for 8 days when this happened?
He must have been a couple of weeks that he was down there.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know when he went and moved out of the apartment. I'm sure he had a lease signed. So how he got from the apartment back to the hotel, I know that some of the guys that he was working with, they were all looking for an apartment to rent together. So if he already had one, why didn't they just move in there?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so help us understand, I believe it is your parents, Jeff, who went down there, or did you also go? It sounds like you also went when you all found out.
I went with my dad the first time, and then...
And that was right after Mike had
that was
disappeared.
right after, a couple of days after he showed up missing.
Uh-huh.
And then my mom and dad went down a few times. We did some talk shows down there. And
like news reporters stuff.
Yeah. I went down a couple of times with my dad after that too, just looking around.
Doing their own kind of investigation because the police were not helpful at the time.
When you say not helpful, like what were they doing at that time?
Well,
they would consider him at his age that he was an adult. He could come and go as he pleased. So they didn't want to do anything. You know, he could come and go.
They weren't worried like they worry now when someone goes missing.
They kept saying that
Talk louder, Mars.
They kept saying that he could leave on his, or they felt he ran away. Ran away from what? He was already, thousands of miles away from his family.
Mm-hmm. I think that is sometimes the overwhelming assumption that people just leave on their own accord, right? And we're talking, I understand there are several jurisdictions in that area. So when we say local law enforcement, I just want to make sure we're talking about the West Palm Beach Police Department. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Because we understand from talking to Paige that there's also a very close law enforcement agency, but because of the nature probably of where the hotel room was, that's where the jurisdiction lies with the police department.
So, sure.
Can you tell us more? What do you know about any of the search efforts that have happened, both back in the late 70s when the disappearance first happened and leading up to now?
Well, we got a private detective to look into it because the police wouldn't do anything. We had a clairvoyant, hired a clairvoyant to see if she used to work with the New York Police Department and help them solve a lot of cases. So we hired her to kind of look into it to see if she could help in any way.
And really, I think the only kind of searches were my dad and grandpa were the ones doing the searches. I remember my dad saying, they were looking in the parking lot. What are those? There's grates and sewer grates. They were the ones looking for Mike. 2 people. They were walking through woods. They were looking in parking lots by themselves. Like it was 2 people looking for Mike.
We'd go to bars looking for his car in the parking lot. We'd just walk through, looking for his car.
And taking your own notes. I mean, My grandpa had his own notes. He had his own notebook. He had a tape recorder that he would record conversations with people by himself.
Yeah, we were kind of spies. So it was in a briefcase that he carried around.
They were trying to talk to people and find any information that they could.
Thank you for reminding us of the car. The car also has not been located. Is that correct?
Correct.
Right. And this was a nice car, like a Grand Prix. Is that what I
correct.
heard? I don't know a lot about
It was brand
cars.
new, I believe.
Brand new. You'd only had it a couple of weeks.
And can you tell us what you know about the events leading up to what seems to be the last time he was seen, that evening?
Well, I think they were going to meet and go to a dog race. The dog races, there's a track not too far away from the hotel he was at. And they met up in a church parking lot. And then they took one car to the track. And then after the track, they went out drinking at bars. And I think it was pretty late that they ended up dropping Mike back off at the church parking lot where his car was.
Yeah, I feel like we've been told a couple different things.
Yeah, we want to dig into that for a second because we've been listening to different stories and we've noted this as a piece of inconsistent information. So in one story, we have that his friend, what was his name again?
Jim.
That they were driving around in Jim's car, and then Michael was dropped back off at his car. And another person we spoke with said that they were driving around in Michael's car, and we went and dropped Jim off. Any clarity around that?
Well, what we were told from the guys at the golf shop was they dropped Mike off at his car. They had left his car in that church parking lot.
A weird thing we find inconsistent with that too is that, they met at the Hojo's, the hotel where Mike's stuff was. They got ready in Mike's room, they being Jim, Mike, and another one of their buddies, Brad. And Brad and Mike wanted to get apparently apartment together. And so Brad was going to go look at this apartment by himself because Jim and Mike were going to head to the dog track first. So what's confusing is why Mike's car was left at the church, which if you look kind of at a map, which we did with Paige, like where apparently Jim's house was, where Hojo's was, where the church was, the opposite direction of the dog track, why Mike's car would ever had been left or parked at the church rather than just at the hotel or Jim's house or, we don't know.
Yeah, there's definitely, and we do have some very scant police records on some things that you have sent to us as well. And so I think that gives us a point to kind of look into, because we do have conflicting. I remember someone saying that when we say they, it sounds like there were three, but at some point they were separated that evening. But, someone said, they were taking Mike's car because maybe Jim had a van and maybe his neighborhood wasn't that great and he didn't want everybody meeting up at his house. And so that's why his car was parked. And then we were thinking, gosh, if I'm 20 and I have a new car, I want to drive everybody around. I don't want to leave my car at the parking lot. But there's definitely some inconsistencies here that give us something to kind of explore further and see if we can get something conclusive there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
It might have been too where he didn't know the area that well. He hadn't been down there that long. So it would be easier for the other guys to be driving around and leaving his car there.
Yes, because
also an excellent,
that's a good point.
There.
Yeah.
So, Jim obviously was familiar with the area.
That's a very good point. And, that even like now when my Michael, who's sitting here with me, when he moved to Colorado and we met, I drove everywhere because I knew all the things. But when we go to Florida, you drive because you know all the things. So that's a very good thought, Jeff, that I hadn't thought about. So thank you for bringing that. But this is definitely something we need to figure out.
Mm-hmm.
We got to figure out which way it was.
Mm-hmm.
Are there things that you know about that? Well, let me preface this. Sometimes we need to consider risk factors. What might someone have been doing that could put them at risk of experiencing something that we wouldn't expect? So do you know of any risk factors that might have been around Mike that may have contributed to what might have happened to him?
Well, I think it was a Friday that he went missing, or that's the night that they went out. So he had gotten a paycheck from work. My mom and dad had sent him some money to help him pay for the apartment or hotel, wherever he was. And then the boys at the golf course said that he had won some money at the dog track. So he could have had quite a bit of money on him. And if you're going to the bars and you're taking out your wad of money to pay for drinks or whatever, people see it.
Also, I think the drinking could have been, they were out at a bar and they were drinking. So that could also be a red flag.
But the other guy said he hadn't been drinking much. Mike hadn't.
Yeah, the people he was with did say that. Yes. Yeah. The people he was with also said he won a lot of money.
I mean, we're very careful with, but not everybody is. Sometimes you just don't think about, I'm just flashing my money around, but it's not something that comes into somebody's reality that people are watching. They're paying attention to.
Yeah. And even after the conversation we had with Paige already, it was also kind of, not only were, some money getting flashed around here, but they were also in some places that may not have been the safest, with the safest groups of people.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And a group of young men, in their 20s, having a good time, maybe not paying attention to what's going on around them.
That's right.
Yeah, also puts them at risk. What do you all think happened? What does your gut tell you?
Well, I guess if I'm thinking outside the box. When they got back to the church where one of the vehicles obviously were and getting dropped off, my understanding is Jim had a house like maybe less than a mile away. So it could have been where, well, why don't you just come to my house? Because we'll get up and go to work the next day then or whatever. And I don't know. That's just my theory. That somehow he got, I don't know, persuaded. I'm not sure on this Jim guy.
I guess my gut would tell me that he got involved with some questionable characters, whether that was at the bar or guys that he had met at the country club. Something bad happened to Mike involving those characters. I think that they could have maybe set him up for something bad to happen. I do think that he was murdered by somebody. I don't think it was an accident.
When it comes to search efforts, I want to go back to that for a second. More recently, what has you and your family been involved in?
So more recently, we've been involved in podcasts. We had Jenny Decker did a podcast on Mike's story. That was awesome. We've obviously done tragedy podcasts with you guys. And then just being involved in the searches that are going on down there with Sunshine State Sonar. So them kind of keeping us in the loop on their searches, whether that's them personally or Paige, always make sure to touch base with us and let us know what's going on. And then we've also been in touch or trying to be in touch with the West Palm Beach Police Department and detectives down there and trying to get records or, kind of make the case current again so that it can be investigated more. You
mentioned about all the notes and the recordings that were collected as part of your own personal investigation. Was any of that provided to the police department?
No, Paige has gotten some of the information.
Well, Paige has everything now that my grandpa had because all my grandpa's notes, calendars, documents, all the things were kept in a box. And so after my grandparents passed away, that box was kept at my aunt's house, Mike's sister, Diane. And then that box got brought here one weekend. We were having a family weekend and we opened it up. This was 3 years ago. We opened up, or maybe longer, I guess, 3-4 years ago, opened up this box. And, our family we all knew, obviously, Mike was missing, especially us nieces and nephews. But, our Uncle Mike was missing, but it also wasn't ever really talked about in our family. We knew it was a touchy subject for everybody, for my grandma and grandpa especially. So, yeah, just wasn't really talked about. We had opened this box a few years ago at a family weekend. And my sisters and I decided, we were going to figure this out. We wanted to know what happened. Now we have social media, we have computers, we can track people's, cell phone numbers. Let's figure out what happened. So we, I don't even know, how.
Could we back up for a
second? Yeah,
because what actually happened is you were scrolling Pinterest.
Oh, yeah.
You were scrolling Pinterest.
At work.
Just looking for craft stuff, right?
Yeah.
And you're scrolling and all of a sudden Mike's picture comes up, which we all know Mike's high school picture.
Yeah.
And you were like, that's my uncle. And it was from the Charlie Project. And so you clicked on it and you were like, I seriously got goosebumps when I'm scrolling Pinterest and randomly my Uncle Mike shows up, his high school picture. It's the Charlie Project and they have very limited information, but it was about Mike. So then you had reached out to me and told me about this. And then we were very interested. But then at some time later, somebody sent you this video that Paige had made, and we hadn't met Paige at that point.
Yeah.
And so then we're like, who is this Paige guy? So we're looking him up in Dad's yearbook. And we're like, why is this Paige randomly making a video about Mike? And
who is
things
he?
keep popping up about Mike. And this is just getting really kind of weird now.
Yeah. And we're totally the sisters that are everything happens for a reason, right? So why is this being put in front of our face? Why do things keep coming up? That's a sign. There has to be a reason.
Somebody is wanting us to dig into this.
Yeah.
Yeah, you sound just like my wife.
I love that. That's totally me.
Yeah.
That's good context. I was like, people are still on Pinterest, and you would not expect, like when you're on Pinterest, you're looking for like wedding gowns and flowers and things like that. I'm sure that was kind of a surprise. I have a question about the findings or conclusions of the private investigator. We've heard about this person a couple of times, but no one's ever talked about what the private investigator determined or shared.
Well, he came across that Mike had gotten a speeding ticket down in Fort Lauderdale, and the detective had talked to the police officer who gave him the ticket. That police officer said that there was a girl in the car with him. We don't know who the girl is. Never
found out.
found anything about that. And then I don't know, it might be a half-hour drive, 45-minute drive from West Palm Beach to Fort Lauderdale.
So we don't know why Mike was there either.
Yeah, we don't. That would make any sense to drive all the way down there.
We also know that the private investigator kind of brushed off these guys from the country club that he was hanging out with that night pretty quickly himself. Like he had noted that he met with these guys. They seemed like great guys, very honest or upfront, I think was the words he used in his documents, and like really cleared everybody that he was with.
So it doesn't sound like the private investigator really determined much of anything other than potentially ruling some people out in their mind.
No, he was on the case. The clairvoyant that we had looking into it thought that he was working at a fast food restaurant in Tallahassee. So, we'd have the private detective go there, check out these restaurants to see if anybody recognized them. So sometimes it was just a wild goose chase.
So we're talking about Sylvia Brown.
Yep.
And this is someone that Paige told us. And I just know who this is because I'm aging myself and the TV shows I used to watch. So I immediately knew who he was talking about. And so you're saying that Sylvia Brown said he was in Tallahassee. And so obviously you're going to do everything that you can possibly do as a family. Why not go check that out? I see.
And we had rewards posted. I think it was like $10,000, which was a lot of money back then for any information.
Did anything ever come from that? Any tips that you all are aware of?
No. No, it's a weird case because he just fell off the face of the earth.
Yeah, I kind of remember Shelley with Sunshine State Sonar sort of describing the geographical proximity of everything. And their sort of perception was, we're going to go down there and we're going to find this vehicle because everything was so close to each other. And when they didn't, they were a little bit surprised, right? Like, where is that car? Because it would seem to be that it would be in some canal or something like that if, in fact, he made a wrong turn or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was our hope when Paige let us know that they were going to go down there and check and do their diving down there.
Yeah.
I want to go back for a second to the box. Is there anything in the box that stood out that's interesting that, maybe either requires more investigation or something that just hasn't been followed up on? Anything that, in your mind that stuck out?
Yeah, I think something that really stuck out for us is my grandpa kept a calendar and he wrote dates of when Mike went missing and different things that happened leading up to that week or right after. And on this calendar, he had wrote that Jim had paid for Mike's hotel room, which seemed very odd. Why would Jim, a 20-year-old, pay for somebody else's hotel room?
And that happened fairly quickly, right? It wasn't like several weeks went by and then he paid it.
Right. I think by the time my dad and grandpa got down there, they had found out like, hey, the room had been paid for already.
But the hotel had emptied out the room and everything that was left in the room, they took and put in the office area at the hotel. But there was still stuff that wasn't missing that should have been in that room.
What type of things?
Well, he had a sewing case, a
shaving bag.
A shaving bag. And a lot of times he would keep some money in there. When we were traveling down there, he always had his money in that case. There should have been an NFL football that the boys at the golf shop said that, they'd throw it around the parking lot at the hotel. So that was missing. His golf clubs were there. Some of his clothes was there, but not all of his clothes. It's just a weird thing. I mean, you don't expect anything to happen.
I think you guys remember, I remember you guys saying if Mike wanted to leave on his own, he would have taken, if anything, he would have taken his golf clubs. Those meant the most to him. So for those to get left behind in the hotel would have been the most unlike him.
Right. They were the most important thing.
One thing that's kind of, when I'm listening to that list, I can't help but think of, okay, he took a shaving bag with him, which is going to have his stuff that he needs for overnight. He took some of his clothes with him. It almost sounds like he intended to stay somewhere else that night.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Based on what's missing. I do also want to go back. We talked about it a little bit, but I want to kind of revisit it for a second. So you went down to set him up in an apartment. He's in the apartment. You find out later he was in a hotel room. It doesn't sound like we know why he left the apartment. Was there any follow-up done on the apartment and maybe trying to determine why he left?
Well, I guess my understanding was that the guys at the golf course were gonna go together in on an apartment to share the costs. So
he was going to break his lease.
Right. And that's hard to do.
Right.
I mean, even back then. So I don't know how. We didn't know that he was in a hotel room until he went missing. We thought he was at the apartment.
And somewhere in the records would be the date he checked into the hotel, which you could then cross-reference to see how quickly that happened in terms of when he went down there.
Yeah. If we had the calendar in front of us, which we do not, but if I did,
But there is a way.
There is notes. Yeah. They're all scanned in and have been shared with Paige also.
And has anyone asked the other, I think it's called the bag room, the other gentlemen who were working in the bag room that were sharing the apartment, why he would have left?
You guys did interview all of the boys in the bag room.
Yeah, we did have a meeting with all of the employees at the golf course one day. Me and my dad did, to find, we were just looking for answers. Who were they? Where were they that night? Who was the last one that saw them?
They didn't give much information. I mean, their information was that they went to the dog track. They were supposed to meet at a bar. It didn't seem like very helpful information. I do know in my grandpa's notes, which is why my sisters and I, when we found that box of information for my aunt, had said like all of their names, first and last names, where they were from. So Michigan, New York, they said that. And then they had a phone number with them. And not that many people had landlines anymore, but we knew that we could track them down with that information given. And that's exactly what Paige and Jenny Decker did when we gave them the information. That's how they tracked all of these guys down, again, all these years later.
So from your perspective, how has his disappearance impacted your family even this many years later?
Definitely a big hole. He's never met my wife. He's never met any of my daughters or the grandkids. There's 11 grandkids we got. That's our life goes on, but in the back, there is not a day that I don't think about it.
His parents would not even move from their house or disconnect their landline because they were always hoping that he would show back up. Emotionally, you've had a tough time your whole life. Oh.
Hey.
I'm just saying.
Thanks.
And even when they did move, they kept the same phone number.
Line.
Yes.
Because every once in a while, they'd get a phone call with nobody there, especially around the holidays.
Can you talk more about that?
Well, sometimes, the phone would ring and you'd pick it up and hello, and nobody would answer. And so we have the Edina Police Department put a trace on our phone. So if they would hang on their line long enough before they hung up, we could trace where that call came from, but they never stayed on the phone long enough for that to work. So our thought was maybe he was hurt and he had the phone number, so he'd call. But, it's just one of them weird things. I mean, that would happen for like 3-4 months after he disappeared.
How many times did it happen?
At least once a day.
Wow. I know that Paige mentioned that, but I had no idea it was happening that often.
Yeah. I don't know. That was one of the weird things. And it didn't matter if I answered the phone or my brother answered the phone or my dad or my mom. I mean, they wouldn't say anything other than, why are you calling?
What else would you like to add? Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you would like to share?
I think that I just want to add, like, we just want to know what happened, right? Like, this many years later, it's not, of course, we would love justice for Mike, but it's just like having answers, having closure.
Thank you for saying that. And there are a couple of ways that people can reach out. So if you do think you know anything, and we've talked about this before in our podcast, it is not up to the public to decide if something is important. Please share if you have anything that you think is relevant or anything that is connected to this at all. Please share that. There's a couple different ways you can do that. You can reach out to the West Palm Beach Police Department, or we have a tip line. It's an anonymous tip line. Anyone can call and you can leave an anonymous name. Whatever is shared with us, we will then make sure we remove any identifying information and then share that directly with the West Palm Beach Police Department. And that tip line number is 850-296-8690. You've been listening to Tragedy, a true crime podcast. Our purpose is to honor victims by sharing their stories through the voices of friends, family, and those whose lives were forever changed. If today's episode resonated with you, we encourage you to follow, leave a review, and share the podcast so these important stories continue to be heard. Together, we can preserve their memories and ensure their voices are never forgotten. If you have ideas for cases we should cover or questions about what you heard, you can connect with us through our Facebook group, Tragedy, a True Crime Podcast, on X @Tragedy Podcast, by email, tragedyaTrueCrimePodcast@gmail.com, or by visiting our website, www.tragedyaTrueCrimePodcast.com. Thank you for listening, and we hope you'll join us next time.